This is the Angry Birds Bird Minute, sponsored by Angry Birds for their 15th anniversary, where we tell you all about a cool bird that may or may not be angry. This week's bird is the emperor penguin. Recognizable as the largest and heaviest penguin in the world, the emperor penguin calls the frigid lands and waters of Antarctica home. During the summer, they spend most of their time at sea, storing up fat for the winter by eating fish, squid, and crabs. The deepest diving bird, they can reach depths of up to 450 meters or 1,500 feet and hold their breaths for half an hour in their search for food. Monogamous for each breeding season, both penguin parents take turns raising the single chick. After the female lays a single egg, she transfers it to the male, where he keeps it warm on the top of his feet under a special layer of skin and feathers. But are they angry? The only bird to breed in Antarctica's winter, emperor penguins have adapted super dense feathers and a thick layer of blubber to protect them from the frigid winds and sub-zero temperatures of the land they call home. On a scale of 1 to angry, we rate the emperor penguin as way cool.
This is Wild Green Streams. I'm Rhett.
I'm Io.
And today we have a really interesting topic, the devil's hole pupfish, one of the most endangered species in the world, totally isolated from anything else like them. There's only ever been a few hundred of them. They're very sensitive to many different environmental factors, as you would imagine for a species that lives in an area that might be smaller than your house. But it turns out they're sensitive to even some factors that we never would have imagined. Io, do you want to talk about that?
I would love to. And I have gone down a devil's hole, you could say, instead of a rabbit hole about these pupfish, because I was like, these guys are crazy. They're only found in one pool of water that's only 18 feet long in Death Valley National Park in the western US. And in 2018, there was an earthquake that happened in the Gulf of Alaska, which all along the western coast of the US, British Columbia, Canada, had a small tsunami, depending on where you are in the world. If earthquakes happen and there are sensors nearby, the sensors send out alerts saying, there's an earthquake happening, get to safety. But usually that happens in the area close to the epicenter of the earthquake. But this was almost 2,000 miles from the epicenter of the earthquake. But the waves in the pool sloshed around to almost a foot high, which I can imagine they probably don't get very high at all since it's just a flat pool of water. And the earthquake triggered a seiche, which is a standing wave oscillating in a body of water. So if you've ever been a kid in a bathtub and swished back and forth and created a little wave, that's
Oh, I
a
have.
seiche. Yeah, the best part. That's the best part.
That is.
It was even a few minutes after the earthquake began, the water in Devil's Hole started sloshing around. So almost 2,000 miles away, and within minutes, the water was affected. That's crazy.
Incredible.
The pupfish are critically endangered. There have only ever been a few hundred of them. The population has gone down to individuals a couple times. There were a couple articles that I saw with titles that were funny, but also if I was a pupfish, maybe my feelings would be hurt. That was like the world's most inbred fish. And I was like, damn, cut him some slack. And they only breed like once or twice a year, maybe out of season. But whenever they do, the males turn iridescent blue. They're showing off, it's obvious. So after the waves went away, the males turned blue. Usually it's in the spring or fall, but sometimes it can be when their habitat is disturbed. They've also found that if there's flash floods sometimes, which can happen in the desert, that can trigger their spawning events. Crazy to think that the world is so interconnected in so many ways, but also in this really tiny specific way that I never in a million years would have predicted.
It reminds me of a quote. Whenever you tug on a thread in nature, you find it hitched to the entire universe.
That's a good one.
It's really true. It's something about how specific it is too. So they're reacting to earthquakes that happen sometimes very far away, Alaska, Japan, all the way out there. And something about it being just this little fish that's only an inch or two long and only a few of them really, it just seems, I don't know how to explain it. It's a really crazy feeling that everything is just so tightly woven that those two completely unrelated in my head things could possibly have such a tight relationship.
It's like such a weird circumstance that just by chance these crazy connections happen that if you tried to plan, no one would believe you. They would be like, that's not realistic. But truth is stranger than fiction, it seems.
Yeah, especially at these long time scales, you wind up with just absolutely wacky things happening that if it's something that happens one in a million years, it's already happened 4,500 times in Earth's history. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
And I think the Devil's Hole published was one of the first animals protected by the Endangered Species Act.
It was because the water in their hole that they live in is actually from a subterranean aquifer, and the Endangered Species Act was required to get them to protections for that aquifer so that nearby cities wouldn't drain it to the point that it sank beneath the shelf they live on.
Mm.
This was one of the first victories of the Endangered Species Act. They definitely saved this species of fish. There's no way that it would have survived without this piece of legislation, which is interesting in itself. Here's a thing that's lived in isolation in this remote place for thousands and thousands of years, all on its own. And then we build a city somewhere else, and somehow it becomes connected to this little karst window. I think what we learned today is that humans aren't the center of everything. Devil's Hole pupfish are.
The center of the earthquakes, maybe. Are they creating the earthquakes? They're like, man, our numbers are getting pretty low. It's time to, like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, how the dolphins are like running everything.
Mhm.
That's this, but it's the fish that are running everything. And they're like, we should shake things up a little bit. And then they literally shake things up and cause earthquakes. And no one's talking about how the desert pupfish is causing all this catastrophe and they need to be held accountable, frankly.
So long, and thanks for all the algae.
Exactly. So long and thanks for all the fish babies from the spawning events triggered by their machinations causing earthquakes on the other side of the planet.
We have officially become
Officially,
officially a conspiracy podcast.
we've always been, but now we truly are. It was a conspiracy theory that we were a conspiracy theory podcast, but now it's confirmed. So is it no longer a conspiracy theory? Are we ready to start a cult? I am.
I'm already in it.
Deep in the devil's hole for the pupfish.
Until then, you can support the pod by going on patreon.com/wildgreenmemes. That's memes with an M. Our music is by RX Fire. Thanks for listening. I'm Rhett,
I'm Io.
and happy Year of the Raccoon.